Hi guys, it's Kamil here. Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy is that dude that published The Road, that might have won some awards. He also is the author of The Black Meridian, that might have been on some best books list put out by some quite well-known newspapers. Oh, and he also came up with the plot for No Country for Old Men that Coen brothers turned into a movie. You know, that dude. I have also the impression that I might have reviewed some of his books earlier on. Let's search for it. Oh, 3 years ago I reviewed Black Meridian and The Child of God. Oh, and it looks like All the Pretty Horses were the first book that I have ever reviewed on this channel. Don't watch it. Now, let's be a bit more serious. We are talking literature here, guys, right?
Can we get serious now?
McCarthy published Suttree in 1979, and whenever you read anything about this book, you will see phrases like semi-autobiographical, most comical McCarthy's novel. And yes, sure, everything is funny if you compare it to earlier McCarthy's novels, where his characters were rapists, necrophiliacs, siblings in an incest relationship, and so on. Here you have only drunkards, hobos, vagabonds, prostitutes, and so on. Cormac McCarthy is one of the writers that I appreciate the most, but also the one that, except for his shorter works, requires more of my attention than most of the other writers I read. Why is it so? Let's start from the writing. McCarthy, especially here or in Black Meridian, writes in a very meaty, descriptive, yet typical to himself, very cold and masculine way. I mean, you know, masculine in this traditional way of thinking of men as less emotional beings way. Somebody online described his style as a brutal indifference written with poetic simplicity, and I think this is quite correct. In addition to that, even though English is not my mother tongue, I believe that my passive vocabulary is quite decent.
I know words, I have the best words.
With him though, I'm often ending up checking the meaning of adjectives on every other page. So let me give you the example of his style. This is the first paragraph here in this novel. I picked the paragraph where I didn't have to use the dictionary for clear understanding. Dear friend, now in these dusty, clockless hours of the town, when the streets lie black and steaming in the wake of the water trucks, and now when the drunk and the homeless have washed up in the lee of walls in alleys or abandoned lots, and cats go forth high-shouldered and lean the green parameters about, now in those soot black brick of cobbled corridors where light wire shadows make a gothic harp of cellar doors, no soul shall work save you. Then if you look for a deep psychological, emotional description of human inner life, you need to pick up Clarice Lispector, for instance. As with this guy at McCarthy's, none of his characters will dwell upon the torments of heart, nor this will be the interest of the narrator. McCarthy's writing, when giving a voice to an ornate narrator's prose, will be contrasted with vulgar, primitive, simplistic language of his characters and filth and the pollution of the environment that he describes. Now on to the plot. No spoilers, as I don't think you can really spoil this book. I mean, a side note, I think that brilliant literature is not really spoilable. You can spoil a crime story, a thriller, or A Fault of Our Stars. But with a book that can offer so much more than a plot, you cannot really spoil it, right? Anyways, Suttree, the main character, author's alter ego seems to be spending life going through it without any course or trajectory. He wanders through streets and bars from one drunk night to another drunk night, from one visit to hospital to another visit to hospital as a patient, from one inflow of money to another, from one glimpse of luck to the moment when he hits the bottom once again. And then when you think that maybe finally the core of the logical, meaningful plot is shaping out, Suttree goes to the dreamlike, almost ayahuasca-like experience, starving himself in the cold, wintry forest, losing his mind to the point that he thinks that the first man that he meets post his forestry delirium is a ghost or sort of a phantom or demon. And then you are thinking again, what's the meaning of this novel? So we have a guy who, just like Ulysses enjoys Ulysses, wanders around without clearer meaning. It got to the point that I was starting wondering that I might be missing something big time. Until in one paragraph, Suttree comes upon one of his vagabond friends. The ragman eyed him suspiciously, but he did not smile. "It won't be long," he said. "An old man's days are ours." "And what happens then?" "When?" "After you're dead." "Don't nothing happen. You're dead. You told me once you believed in God." The old man waved his hand. "Maybe," he said. "I got no reason to think he believes in me. Oh, I'd like to see him for a minute if I could." "What would you say to him?" "Well, I think I'd just tell him, I'd say, wait a minute, wait just 1 minute before you start in on me. Before you say anything, there's just one thing I'd like to know." And he'll say, "What's that?" And then I'm going to ask him, "What did you have me in that crap gate down there for anyway? I couldn't put any part of it together." Yeah, so here you have it. This book will have no clear meaning, as this is McCarthy's play in imitating life. This is what he does in Suttree. You just go from one day to the next, from one experience to the next. There's no deeper meaning than that. All you have are those experiences that, once put together, do not really amount to anything bigger than a simple collection of those. Of course, a lot of people, a lot of you will disagree with this definition of life, but I read it as McCarthy's take on what life is. You are all probably wondering, is there any point in reading 600 pages book that do not have any clearer message aside of life doesn't make much sense type of a message? And my answer is yes. Because literature is a form of art. It's so much more than a plot. The plot should be just a tool to convey ideas. And those ideas do not have to be presented on a golden platter. It's you and the book. And McCarthy and his writing, the references, the contextuality is just such a feast when you look for books that offer more than just a pleasant pastime. Okay, guys. That's it for today. Let me know if you read any of McCarthy's novels. I know that I read a few. Tell me if you read Suttree and if you liked it. And I'm going to continue reading another plot-free mammoth, Ducks Newberry Report by Lucy Ellman. This is it. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye bye.